All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're breaking down a geopolitical firestorm that has just erupted between the United States and, believe it or not, its closest European allies. The battleground? Greenland. The weapon of choice? Tariffs. This is the story of how a foreign policy tool can boomerang with shocking speed.
You know, the source material for this kicks off with this really powerful analogy, and honestly, it just perfectly captures this whole crisis. For a while there, it seemed like Europe was perfectly happy to watch the US aim its economic firepower at other countries. But now, that same fire they were warming their hands by is threatening to burn their own house down. Okay, let's dive into how we got here.
So, to really get what's happening, we gotta rewind just a little bit. Because not too long ago, a lot of European nations were, as our source material puts it, basically acting as cheerleaders for this aggressive use of tariffs as a political weapon.
What's just wild here is the complete 180. When the US started hitting countries like India and China with tariffs because they were trading with Russia, European leaders were right there, clapping them on the back. From their perspective, it was a good way to put pressure on Russia over the war in Ukraine. They just never ever imagined they'd be the ones on the receiving end.
So the big question is, how did everything turn on a dime like this? I mean, the world's attention was on crises in places like Venezuela, and Europe was standing shoulder to shoulder with the US on that. Then, almost literally overnight, the geopolitical camera just snapped its focus to a new, completely unexpected place.
I mean, seriously, what could possibly shift global alliances that fast and turn everything on its head?
It all comes down to one word: Greenland. Suddenly, this massive autonomous Danish territory became the absolute epicenter of a huge transatlantic fight.
And things escalated with breathtaking speed. It all kicked off with a kind of cryptic tweet in early January. In response, and this is key, at Denmark's request, 8 NATO allies sent forces to Greenland for what they called military exercises. But President Trump, he didn't see it that way. Not at all. He saw it as a direct challenge, and his reaction was immediate and, well, pretty severe.
He dropped the hammer. A 10% tariff on all goods from those 8 nations. We're talking France, Germany, the UK, Norway, set to start on February 1st. And he threatened to crank it all the way up to 25% if they didn't back down. Just like that, the economic weapon was turned on his own allies.
Okay, so with this huge economic threat hanging over their heads, how did Europe react? Well, that quiet cheerleading, yeah, that went right out the window. And in its place, a really loud, really unified pushback.
French President Emmanuel Macron was one of the first to come out swinging, calling the threats totally unacceptable and promising that Europe would respond as one. The message was crystal clear. We are not going to be bullied.
And he wasn't alone. Right on his heels was the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, saying pretty much the same thing. She framed this as a huge risk to the entire relationship between Europe and the US, and basically said Europe was committed to protecting its own sovereignty.
And look, this wasn't just coming from the bigwigs in Paris and Brussels. A wave of solidarity just swept across the continent. You had Denmark stating it plainly: Greenland is not for sale. Then you had Germany, the UK, Norway, and others, all speaking with one resolute voice.
Now, to really understand why this is such a huge deal, you have to look at the money involved. We are not talking about chump change here.
$1.5 trillion. That's the value of trade flowing between the US and the European Union every single year. It is one of the biggest, most important economic partnerships on the entire planet. And if you dig into the details, yeah, the US does run a trade deficit with the EU, about $147 billion. But here's the thing, in the context of a $1.5 trillion relationship, that's actually less than 10%. The bottom line is, this is a massive, deeply intertwined partnership where both sides have an immense amount to lose.
And this just shows you how vital the EU is. It's right up there at the top of the list for US trading partners. The source material makes a really interesting point here that if these major trading blocs ever decided to form some kind of united export union, they could exert some serious leverage over the American economy.
So where does this completely unprecedented standoff leave us? Well, right now, all eyes are on a few key things.
First up, and this is probably the most important part of the whole story, what do the people of Greenland actually want? Well, the numbers are pretty darn clear. An overwhelming 85% of them want to remain part of the Kingdom of Denmark. Their voice on this is unequivocal.
And they're not just saying it in polls either. They are out on the streets. Get this, a full quarter of Greenland's entire population has been out protesting. Can you imagine 1 out of every 4 people in your country taking to the streets? That sends a powerful, powerful message.
So that brings us to right now. We're in this incredibly tense standoff. The next big moment, the next potential off-ramp, or maybe flashpoint, is the upcoming World Economic Forum in Davos. When all these leaders get in the same room, this conflict is going to be the massive elephant that nobody can ignore.
Which all leaves us with one final and pretty sobering question. This isn't just about tariffs or territory anymore. It's a fundamental stress test of a 70-year-old alliance. What happens in the next few weeks could redefine global relationships for decades. And it forces us to ask, are we watching a historic fracture in the Western world?